That's right, a decision has been made on which Z camera I decided to buy. Let's talk about it. Hi guys and welcome back, it's Jason and I'm glad to see you all here again. And that's right, I have decided on a Z camera. And if you haven't watched the previous two videos that I made regarding all the decisions and everything that I was trying to make over the past few weeks on what I was going to spend my hard-earned dollars on when it comes to buying a new camera, it's been about 6 years since I bought a new camera. And if you haven't watched those videos, I will link the first one up here and you can go and check that out. So the decision has been made. I have bought the Nikon Z6II. Now what we're going to go through today is kind of my decision process and what made me buy this one versus maybe the Z5, and I'm going to kind of give you my first impressions of the camera, as I've only had it for about a week or so, and that's why I'm not doing an unboxing. I got the camera and I had a wedding to shoot last weekend, so I almost immediately had it into action and started using it. So one of the videos that I made was about which first lens I was going to get. Now, one thing I can tell you is that I am filming this video on the Z6II right now as we speak, and with the first lens, the first Z lens that I bought. So now, as you can see on the front of this box, it says Z6II with 24-70 f4. Now, that's actually not what I got. That's what I was going to get when I went to my local camera shop. I like to go to my local camera shop. Shout out Ivan's Camera. Not sponsored. This kit was there. The thing was, the camera shop had already sold the 24-70 f4 that was in this kit. The Z6II was still in the kit, but the lens wasn't. They didn't have a 24-70 f4 in the store. Sitting right next to this box was this guy. The other choice that I was going to make, the 50mm Z f1.8. And that's what I'm being filmed on right now. So I'm going to give you a couple of first impressions on this. I'm going to do a review video on this lens itself later, once I've had a chance to use it a little bit more. I did shoot almost an entire wedding with this lens and the Z6II, and I'll tell you, this lens is sharp. It is really, really, really sharp. It's pretty incredible. So I did get this, and I also did get the FTZ adapter. So there it is, the Z6II 50mm 1.8 and the FTZ adapter. So that's where we're going to start out today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the camera, the lens, and my first impressions so far. So you may see me look down here every once in a while. I'm just referring to some notes that I made of my first impressions as something that popped into my head about using the camera or the lens, whatever. And I may have jotted them down, so I'm just going to check those every once in a while. But so obviously the decision was made for me when I went to the camera shop when it came to my lens choice from my last video, and I'll link that down below as well, so you can see both videos in my Z camera decision making process over the last month. Now that decision was made for me, so obviously I still had the choice when I went to the camera shop of getting the Z5 or getting the Z6II. Now, one of the main decisions, some of the technical decisions that I used to make this decision. One of the things was that this camera could film in 1080p 120. The Z5 cannot. So that was something that I don't do very often, but I did want to have that option. So that option is there in the Z6II. And also the Z6II has 2 card slots. The Z5 does as well, but they're both SD cards. Now, I'm still only using an SD card in my Z6II. I am in the process of deciding which CF Express card I want to get for the Z6II. And if anybody has any suggestions of their favorite of their favorite CF Express Type B cards that they like to use, open to suggestions, and I'd love to hear your input. You can put that in the comments down below. While you're down there, please take a minute and like this video. Hit subscribe if you're interested in coming back for more Nikon photography, lens, all kinds of stuff. So I'd appreciate you coming back again. And so another thing that that really swayed my decision a little bit was the fact that the Z6II had 2 XP6 processors in it that helped with video and processing and buffer, and the Z5 only had 1. So that was part of the decision making. Now, speaking of the cards again, one of the things is I was thinking of future-proofing, and I always like to buy a little bit more camera than I actually need. The Z5 fit right kind of in the same range of where I was coming from in the DSLR. It was kind of the mid-range. I felt like the Z6II was a little bit more camera, and I wanted to have somewhere that I could learn to grow into. And I'll tell you, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but especially with things like the EVF and the touch screen and things like that. But it wasn't too bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, going from a DSLR to a mirrorless. It was actually surprisingly simple. And that was one of the first impressions that I had of the camera, was the fact that it was easier than I thought it was going to be. There was no major transition to go from the DSLR world to the mirrorless world. It was actually quite simple. The EVF was a little bit of a shock, you know, when I started using it, when I put my eye up to the camera and the screen goes off and boom, there's this bright image, and it was a bit of an adjustment, but it was not that hard to get used to. One of the biggest things that I noticed almost right away is how incredibly quiet the camera is. I actually, at the wedding that I shot last weekend, I was still using my D7100 DSLR as a second camera. And whenever I used that camera, it shocked me how loud it was compared to the Z6II. The Z6II was, I can almost not hear it when I'm actually shooting. It's quite remarkable how quiet it is. That was one of the first things that I noticed. The Z6II, it's light, it's small, it feels good in the hand. The grip is fantastic. It's a very familiar Nikon grip, and the buttons are right where they should be. That's one thing that I noticed too, is that it was rather quick for me to learn where the shutter button, the ISO button, the record button, things like that were, and it was rather quick, and I was surprised by that, because when I switched from my D7000 to my D7100, Nikon had moved some of the buttons around on me, and even though they were pretty much the same body, my muscle memory was all messed up. But this was pretty quick. I learned where things were. Now I still have to think about it a little bit more, but I think that'll come very quick, that I won't have to think about it as much more. One thing I did notice was the shutter button is incredibly sensitive, that I found myself, you know, even sometimes just resting my finger on it and I was taking a picture, where I don't know if it was just wear and tear from my old camera that I had to press the shutter harder, or if this is a common thing, but I noticed that the shutter button was extremely sensitive. I like having the ISO button on top that I can, while I've got the camera up to my face, I can press the ISO button and I can see the ISO on the bottom of the screen, and I can switch it from either ISO, auto ISO on with the front wheel, or I can adjust the ISO with the back wheel. That is great. I loved that. That made it very easy. Another technical thing that I wanted to mention was that the reason I chose the Z6II over the Z5 was the ability for it to shoot up to 14 frames per second, whereas the Z5 was only 4.5. When I was shooting the wedding last weekend, I did actually utilize that that frame rate, and it came in quite handy. So I did use that a lot when we were doing things like a sparkler walk through the crowd, or walking down the aisle, or the first kiss. You know, I could fire off a bunch of shots really fast, and it worked really great. So that was another thing that was in my frame of mind when I was choosing between the two cameras. The IBIS, or in-body image stabilization, seemed to work fantastically. I didn't notice anything that was getting blurry or shaking or anything like that because of me being handheld. I shot pretty much everything handheld since I've had this camera. One thing I wanted to mention as well was I really like the fact that I can have the camera up to my face, and I can just literally move my finger and I can switch from shooting stills to shooting video instantly, and I don't even have to think about it. It's right there, boom, I'm ready to go into video, and I flick the switch and I'm back to stills. I didn't do any video on my D7100 because, quite honestly, it was complete and utter trash. The video coming out of that camera was absolute garbage. The video that comes out of this camera is absolutely fantastic, as you'll be able to see in this video. I haven't played a lot around with the different frame rates in the camera or the flat profile or anything like that, but I did want to mention that that toggle switch for the stills and the video, it makes things so easy. Now, I did have one question, and maybe you guys can help me out in the comments down below. And I haven't figured out how to change this yet. One thing with my old camera was when I took a vertical shot, when the picture came up on the display afterwards, it would still stay in that on the whole screen. On this camera, it turns vertically in the horizontal window, and that drives me absolutely crazy because it makes the picture so little tiny right in the middle of the screen. Now, I know I can go in and I can review it on the EVF, but if I just want to look quick and make sure that I got the picture, and it's this tiny little thing on the screen that I have to stop, I have to zoom in. If you're an Nikon shooter and you're using the new Z cameras and the mirrorless cameras, and you know how to switch that so that that picture, when I take it, it displays on the screen, on the whole screen, versus shifting to its vertical orientation on the horizontal window. I hope I'm explaining that correctly. Help me out. Shoot a comment down below and let me know, how do I change that, because I haven't been able to figure it out yet. Now, one thing that I wanted to mention as well, this little thing, the F to Z adapter that allows you to use your old F-mount lenses on your new Z camera, this thing works fantastically. My, for example, 70-200 f4 F-mount lens worked like a dream on this camera. Autofocus perfectly, the pictures were fantastic. It worked like a gem. Now, one thing that surprised me was two of my DX lenses I didn't think was going to work on the camera. My Sigma Art 18-35 1.8 and my Tokina 11-16 2.8. they worked. And I can't explain it. I was told they weren't going to work, but they do. And now, of course, they are in a DX mode. They are in the crop mode. They aren't full frame, but they still work. So I was going to actually sell those lenses and buy another Z lens, but do I do that now? I don't know. I'm hoping that in the very near future that Sigma has some Z lenses, because I really, really like my 18 to 35 1.8 art. I love that lens. It was the lens that I actually used the most. It very rarely came off my camera, so not having that is kind of a pain in the butt. But I can't say enough good things about the FTZ. This thing is a gem. If you have old lenses, even old full frame F lenses, this thing will make them work like a dream on your new Z camera. It has the mount for your tripod right on the bottom of this, so that you can put your tripod mount right on this, so that you have a nice balance with your camera if you're using a longer lens. It's a great little unit, and I'm glad that I got this. I did get it for a little bit of a deal by buying the camera. I think it was a couple $100 off the regular price, so I got it for like $130. So that, the Canadian, of course, and it works like a gem. So I highly recommend this if you do get a new Z camera and have old lenses that you want to use. Now, one thing when I was going through this decision process, I was hearing a lot of complaints about the autofocus and how the camera focused on things and how it was behind some of the other camera manufacturers, etc., etc. And quite honestly, I didn't see it. The camera focused quickly. It works really, really well, and I like the fact that there are many different autofocus options in there. There's single point, there's wide area eye autofocus, animals, dynamic autofocus. There's so many different types of autofocus that you can use for different scenarios that I don't understand some of the negative comments that we were getting. The fact that I could shoot an entire wedding, and I was looking through my pictures, there wasn't much that I missed, and I shot over 1,500 pictures last weekend. I don't have any complaints so far when it comes to the autofocus. So far it works really well, and down the road I may do a 6-month review of the camera or whatever, and give you more feedback. But so far, straight ahead, it works. It's great. So when it comes to video, it just works. The autofocus just works. I've got it. You're seeing it right now. It works perfectly. So there's it transitions well when I move from scene to scene. It's quick, it's responsive. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever. When it comes to the battery, I was a little surprised, again, shooting the wedding that I did last weekend, how quickly I burned through a battery. Now, I did have some extra batteries from my other cameras. That's one good thing. If you have EL15 B, C, well, this is a C. If you have the B, you have the A. They will work in this camera. They won't last as long as the newest battery, because the new battery, the EL15C, it does have a little more capacity. I did go through the battery that comes with the camera quite quickly, quicker than I normally would shooting with my old DSLR. Normally I could probably get through the entire wedding with one battery. This wedding I had to use 2 different batteries in the Z6II. So that was a little bit of a surprise, but it's not something that is a deal breaker for me. It's just a matter of getting an extra battery and having it charged. That's not a big deal. So you know, you have to factor in that there's a lot going on. You've got the EVF going on. You've got the autofocus constantly trying to focus on something. You've got the touch screen. You've got the top screen. And those are two things I wanted to talk about as well. The top screen was something that the Z5 doesn't have. It was removed, obviously. That's one of the things that they took away in the Z5 versus the Z6II. I didn't think that I used the top screen as much as I do, but when I was shooting, I actually realized that a quick glance at that top screen is something that I do actually use more than I thought. And that was another part of my decision-making process, and I'm glad that I actually made that decision. I would have missed that for sure. You know, with your battery indicator, your ISO, how many shots you've got left, all of that being right there on the top of your camera with a quick glance, I really appreciate that. Speaking of the touchscreen, it works really well. The pinch zoom and that works fantastically. All your functions and controls can be utilized and changed via your touchscreen. It works really well. The flip out part, I wasn't sure if I was going to use it. I was kind of disappointed that the Z6II didn't have a flip out screen versus a flip up. I still think the flip up would have been like a major selling point for this camera. Maybe the next iteration, Z6III, perhaps will have the flip out, seeing as how they now have it on the Z5. But the touchscreen itself works fantastically. It's the first time I've had a camera that actually has any kind of flip screen. And ironically enough, I did actually use it a couple of times at the wedding that I was shooting last weekend. I did have a couple of options where I was shooting low and I had the option of flipping the screen up so that I could see what I was shooting versus having to, you know, do the classic photographer, lay on the ground, look at things. So that was nice to have. As I said before, the camera sits well in the hand. The buttons are in really intuitive places. They work really well. The knurling on the front and back button are fantastic. Really sensitive to the touch, so I mean, it works really good. Basically, that's my first impressions so far, and I would definitely recommend this camera with how much I've gotten to use it so far. With the seasons changing right now and the leaves changing, I'm going to get out and I'm going to shoot a lot more pictures over the next few weeks. Lots of highly colorful and brilliant landscapes, and hopefully, and really see if I can push the camera a little bit. And I'll come back. Another thing, I want to do a video on the 50mm 1.8 and give you my impressions of that. My first impression of that of the lens is that the reports of it being extremely sharp were not unwarranted. It is incredibly sharp. It's a fantastic lens. It's quiet. You don't even hear it. Like if somebody tells you you hear it moving, they've got better ears than I do. The motors in this thing are extremely quiet. So one thing, I just want to say thank you for being here. I hope that you like the video down below, and I hope you subscribe, come back for more. I really appreciate you guys being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time.